Being 6 o'clock, I call the special board meeting for July 10th, 2019 of the Lisle Library District to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Tom Duffy.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Jenny Norton.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Emily Swistay.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is for opportunity for visitors to speak. Seeing no visitors, we will move on to the crux of the meeting, which is the facility condition assessment report by FQC. I'll introduce Jack Hayes of FQC, who prepared the report, and he will give the presentation. It's probably best we'll just let him go through the report, and we'll save the questions till the end, and we'll do questions and any discussion afterwards. So,
Great.
I'll turn the floor over to you.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it. I did put together a little overview slideshow to kind of walk through the high points of the report. There's a lot of words and stuff in that report, so would it help if I give you a little background about myself and our company so you kind of know where I'm coming from?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I've been a Lisle resident I've been married 35 years, and we've lived here 33 of them. So lived in the Meadows for the last 29 or so, something like that. And card-carrying member of the Lisle Library. And as a company, Frederick Quinn Corporation is a construction management company that focuses primarily on public sector clients. So we work with libraries, school districts, municipalities, park districts, and the federal government. So at this point in time, we typically have at any point in time, we typically have about $100 to $150 million worth of construction in some stage of completion or execution or startup. We build new libraries, we renovate libraries, we do facility capital studies for libraries. We're currently doing one for Addison Library, we've done them for Lombard, Wilmette, Niles, just finished one for Niles as well. So a lot of our work, libraries is one of our main markets that we work in. Libraries, park districts, schools, and municipal projects is kind of our core practice areas. And we found that by getting involved in these facility condition assessments, we bring kind of a unique perspective on them versus a design or architectural type firm who tend to focus, at least from our standpoint, they tend to focus a lot on finishes and furniture, and we focus on kind of what you can't see, which is usually your big dollar items. And because of the fact that we build buildings like this all the time and we work with trade contractors, we feel we have a pretty good handle on what's going on in the marketplace with regard to costs. I have worked on a variety of miscellaneous projects for the Lisle Library District going back to about, I think it's 2012 or 13. Some windows, some parking lot stuff, just some miscellaneous things, nothing of any real major significance. So I'm the president of Frederick Quinn. We've been around since 1966. And so that's kind of the high points. Okay? So I want to start with just talking a little bit about what the facility condition assessment is, which is analysis, like I said, of what you can't see or what you don't focus on very much, which is your big ticket items of major building systems like your mechanical system, your electrical infrastructure, your roof, things like an elevator. What we do is we try to go through and we look at all the systems. We had a variety of other trade contractors look at things, engineers look at things, and determine what the status of the existing condition of the systems are, based on their age and existing condition and maintenance history, what their expected useful life is of those systems, and then for those things that we identify that need some recommended corrective action, short or long term, identify what the costs or cost magnitudes of those items are. It's important to point out that we don't spend time looking at how many people you serve, how many staff you have, what is your collection, how many stacked shelves you have. Determine space needs and how well you're utilizing it. That's not part of this process. That's typically an architectural assignment. And so we don't work on kind of the operational, how you're using your library. We look at what the health of your building is, how well it's maintained, and how it's going to serve you moving into the future. And also, it's not a code study. We don't come in and say, you're out of compliance on A, B, and C. You have to do these things. There's reasons for that. One main thing is we don't want to put you in a position of having something on paper that says you must do this because you're out of compliance, because then that might expose you to other liabilities that aren't in your best interest. And also with regard to ADA or the Americans with Disabilities Act, buildings of this vintage are not going to be in compliance. You can always find something in this kind of building. If there was something that was a major issue, we might mention it, but basically your building, you can get in and out of your building, which is the main thing. You can traverse the building on all 3 levels via the elevator, which is a main thing. And so there was nothing really to point out from a critical standpoint. So that's what we try to do. And then in going through, we try to establish some priority rankings, critical being the most urgent, A, B, and C, which is basically different ranking systems leading to a good rating, something that should last you for 10 years or more. And then how we get to each rating, meaning that if it's critical, what we're trying to say is there's something that could either be a safety issue, potential safety issue, or could lead to the library closing for more than a day or 2. And we'll get into some of those items here in a minute. And then as we rank down each different category, just different levels of condition assessment and evaluation. So I thought it would be good to point out some general observations. These aren't necessarily written verbatim in the report, but I think it's important to point out that the library has been and continues to be pretty well maintained. You invest in your facility on a pretty reasonable level. So as a result, it's in fair to good condition overall, which is good. There's a few things that need attention, and there's some high dollar items that do need attention in the near future, but it's not like it's crumbling around you. It's serviceable, basically. There are some things that we don't spend a lot of time on, like finishes. We try to, that's very subjective. So we mention them, we talk about them. I put it here that there are some things that are aging. Carpet in a library is an expensive item, and it needs regular replacement. 8 years is the standard in libraries. If you can get 10 out of it, that's great. So you go through a lot of carpet. Your public restrooms on this level are pretty old. They haven't really been refurbished overall. They show it, and I know that there's some thought about doing some things there, but a wholesale upgrade of those restrooms, if you're going to be here for 10 or 15 years, is something that would be a good investment. Electrical issues, there's a variety of things that go into this conversation about electrical. I'll try to drill into that in a little bit. It's not a service issue. You have plenty of power in the building. It's where you have it, how you have it. Is it loaded properly within the panels? The panels are aging to the point where some of the circuit breakers should be upgraded or replaced. So it's not a systemic problem, but there are some things that need to be addressed from an electrical standpoint. And then in this particular case, because of the history of some of the problems you've had from the stormwater, I was asked to look at a report that was done last fall and give an additional review of that information, which I think you've already spoken about previously, so that's included in the report as well. So, summary of findings. The urgent items that were identified is that as you walk around the site, the civil site issues outside, the main thing is that there are some curb, sidewalk type things that are trip hazards. They're deteriorating. Some curbs have been identified for replacement. It's just a good safety thing to stay on top of. Your aging infrastructure includes your parking and curbs and sidewalks, and it's something just to be vigilant about as you go forward. HVAC, heating, ventilating, air conditioning. So you have essentially 2 sides of the building. You have the west half and the east half, as you know. The west half is original, the east half was the addition in '87. They both are served by two large air handling units. The air handling units are located in the west mechanical room in the southwest corner and the east mechanical room in the southeast corner. In each location, you have two large air handling units that are connected to boilers, both of which are in the west mechanical room, and condensing units, which are on the outside of the building in the southeast courtyard and then the southwest courtyard. The boilers are in reasonably good shape and are staged out in future years because of their condition, and the condensers are the same. However, the air handlers are original. Air handlers accompany the mechanical heating system, the cooling system, and the ventilation system throughout the building. They're of the age that parts are becoming not available. They're having to work around things. Monaco, when I say they, I'm talking about Monaco, the company that services your equipment. And from all reports, they do a great job of keeping things going. But those air handling units are at a point where if they go out, you're not going to have either heating in the winter or cooling in the summer or ventilation. And you could very literally, like on a day like today, if you didn't have cooling in this building, you might be able to get through it a day, maybe a second day, but if it goes into a week or 2 weeks, my guess is you would probably shut the library down. So a thoughtful, near-term plan to get those units engineered and replaced, because the technology is, in the last 35 years, you can imagine, the technology has changed, how they interact with the building automation system, how they interact with the boiler system, all of that. You can't just plug and play. It's not, I'm going to go out and buy a new air handler and put it in. You need to hire an engineer. They need to look at your system. They need to provide the right analysis of what you need to do. You got to go out for bid. You got to get the bids. You got to award it. They got to buy the equipment. They got to procure it. This process now, all of a sudden, if we started today, you probably were looking at 6 months before you have that air handling equipment. Okay, so it's the process takes a long time. So when I say this is a critical issue, I'm saying sometime in the next year, and I would recommend a swing season, meaning the fall or the spring, because those are your times when you're going to be out of service for some shorter period of time when this happens. So you can potentially stage that east-west. You can make other accommodations to try to do temporary temperature control if needed. But if you do it in those swing seasons, those needs are greatly reduced because you're in a moderate temperature range. So that's HVAC. Electrical, the two things there that really came to the surface from an electrical standpoint, short term, is the UPS system, the uninterruptible power source that provides backup power for your servers. Is already being looked at for upgrade and replacement. It's of an age where the batteries, if you had to use the batteries, there's the potential that they may not even work, or if you went to battery, they may not last but a short period of time, a matter of hours. So that's something that I'm glad you're looking at that, and I fully support getting that upgraded and replaced. And then the paging system, which is kind of it's kind of falls into that safety category. If something happened in the building that you needed to let everybody know what was going on, the paging system is not reliable and could be is in need of upgrade or replacement. And then stormwater. I know that there has been a lot of recommendations. What we tried to do in the report is identify those critical items that we think would provide the most beneficial short-term relief to the concerns and the problems that you've had, which is to repair a couple of the items that were identified in the Visu Sewer report, to work with an engineer to come up with an alternative approach to the restrictors that are in place that are not used in modern stormwater design implementations. They're a 1-inch restrictor on a 6 to 8 inch line, and they just don't do that anymore. So you can isolate that problem in that structure and provide a different solution, which we did bring an engineer in and sat and talked through that. But it needs to be an engineered solution because the stormwater system is working the way it was designed to work. You cannot just let your water run off your site. That's against the DuPage County stormwater standards. So you have to hold it, you have to control the rate of flow off your site, and you have to collect it in certain ways. So it's doing all of that. The problem is it's aged to a point where deterioration, breaks in the system, changes in the way the topography works around your site and your neighbor's site is introducing more sediment and the potential for backups in your restrictors. The likelihood of changing all of those other things, so those restrictors work, are very low. The likelihood of improving the way that the restrictor works in your system, so you don't have backups in your parking lot, is a much higher likelihood of success. And then you have some landscape areas on the south portion of the east lot, where you've got that landscape hill that comes down to the parking lot, and it bleeds or seeps water across the sidewalk into the parking lot. That condition is just a byproduct of groundwater coming from higher properties, coming out the earthen wall onto your sidewalks, which becomes it's eroding the space between your sidewalks and your curbs, which is creating some of the problem with your curbs and your sidewalks. And then it's coming onto your parking lot, and in the winter, when you have those freeze-thaw cycles, everybody knows you're going to walk and you're going to fall, and it creates other problems. So in that location, and then on the west side of the north staff lot, you've got a similar situation that seeps down the hill west of the building and onto the parking lot drive aisle, working out to that entry into the staff lot. So those were the things, of all the things that you have in your building, which you have a lot, those were the things that kind of rose to the surface of items that were determined or recommended to be addressed sooner than later. That would help keep you going, keep you kind of solid from a maintenance and infrastructure standpoint. And so the $510,000 is the total estimated value of doing these things that are identified in the report. And then I just quickly will go through A, B, and C. A lot of the items in priority A, which total $417,000, were maintenance related, seal coating your parking lot, replacing some not damaged, but deteriorated window units that have broken seals and aren't repairable, continuing to upgrade your lighting to LED and replacing some fixtures which can't accommodate the new LED lamps. The main cost item in this section was the recommendation to upgrade your restrooms, kind of wholesale, tear them out, replace them, and then carpeting replacement throughout the library. And then we recommend in this area that because of the concerns and problems, you don't have any real lighting controls in this building. You have switches. You used to have a lighting control system in the original portion of the building that was deactivated, and then I think everything was just basically put on a switch or two, which isn't really ideal for this kind of environment. Also, occupancy sensors is something that are recommended in public spaces so that the lights come on and go off as the space is being utilized. It's actually an energy code thing, which again, we're not in a code compliance, but it is a good thing to do. And then there were some comments about power surges and problems with power in certain areas. Of course, in today's world of technology, we need more power outlets all over the place. So looking at it from a system standpoint is something I think would serve the library well for the long term, rather than just trying to just replace the lights or just put in some new lighting controls. Take a look at your electrical loads because you have basically two main panels. You've got one in the original and you've got one in the addition. And you might have an imbalance there. They're of the age where the circuit breakers aren't as reliable. So some kind of an investment in your electrical power system is warranted when you look out 2 to 5 years. It's not an urgent item, but it would probably make a lot of users and patrons happy. B, again, some additional finished items, paint, ceilings. Ceilings are starting to look a little dated. Those kind of things. That's again, it's kind of a subjective thing. That can go whenever you want. There is one of the boilers that's we couldn't pin down exactly how old it was, so we put it into the 5 to 10 year range to upgrade one of the boilers. And then in that 5 to 10 year range, you're probably going to be at a point where you're going to need to repaint the exterior of the building. The retaining walls, while they're in reasonably good condition, they are starting to sag in areas, they're starting to bow in some areas. There's probably going to need to be some maintenance of those retaining walls in your stormwater areas, as well as some of your landscape areas. Again, not a lot of dollars here, $225,000. And then finally, some of the bigger ticket items go further out into that 10-year range, which is good from a capital planning standpoint. You can plan for them. Your roof is in great condition. I'd say with the roof that you have and the level of traffic that it gets, as long as you keep it clean and get the gutters cleaned out, I'd be surprised if this roof doesn't last you another 15 years. I put it in the 10+ range, but it's good condition. Windows I put in here because I think at some point in time you're going to want to upgrade all your windows. It's an energy efficiency thing as well. It helps from that standpoint. And then additional HVAC equipment will be in that age where you're going to want to plan for the capital expenditure of replacing condensers, replacing maybe the Liebert unit, which serves the small air conditioning unit that serves the server room. It'll be at the age where it probably makes sense. And then the big dollar here is, in 10 years, the ongoing deterioration and aging of your parking lot and sidewalks and curbs are going to be to the point where probably will require a wholesale tear out and replacement, which is going to be a big job. It's several $100,000. I think I put $300,000 or $350,000 in there for that. It's a big job. It's a big parking lot. There's a lot of sidewalks, a lot of curbs. And the challenge with that is that when you do that, then you get into that ADA issue, because that will trigger code requirements, those types of things. So some of the ramping that you have will become a challenge on this site. But again, that's long term, 10+ years type of thing to think about. So I think that was it. Yeah. So that's the summary.
Okay.
But I'm happy to talk about any of these things and answer any questions and see if there's anything else that will help in your plan.
I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
First of all, I enjoyed reading your report. I thought it was so thorough
Thank you.
and so easy to understand for somebody who's not familiar with all this type of information.
Good.
I just thought it was excellent.
Thank you.
The one thing that I was curious about is, I believe somewhere, and I can't find it right now, you mentioned that there might be grants that we would want to apply for.
Absolutely.
Could you talk a little bit about those?
Well, I know that ComEd has grants for lighting upgrades.
Okay.
And I think that there's also, I want to say it's DECA, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity in the state of Illinois. I believe they also have a grant program that might help. Now, we're talking, you might get a $10,000 or $20,000 grant to help offset the cost of upgrades, and it's all about energy efficiency. So if you spend X amount of dollars on replacing light fixtures to LED lamps to go from a T8 to a more LED situation, you're going to demonstrate that you're going to be saving energy. So they want to help motivate you to do that. And I've heard clients getting in the, I would say, in the $10,000 to $20,000 grant range for some of that stuff. But ComEd is where I believe I'm right in saying it's ComEd, which is where most of this is coming from, which we pay for.
Right.
Right? I mean, we pay them and they pay you, which is okay. I mean, if it's available, go get it. I understand. I haven't personally gone and helped a client do that. Typically, they've been able to go after it themselves, and once we get them going, they say, oh yeah, I can figure this out. So
We're doing that in Green Trails and replacing about 200 light fixtures there. And because of the grants we're getting from ComEd, it's enabling us to replace all the lights in 1 year instead of staging them over 3. So I was wondering if that's the type of grants you were talking about, and it sounds very similar.
It does, yeah, that sounds exactly like what I'm thinking, yeah. So, yeah, it's literally free money. You have to do it, and because this kind of was triggered in my thoughts, one of the last meetings we had, because you've had some success just replacing the lamps, the light bulbs with new LED light bulbs, but now that they're getting into the older fixtures, it's not working because they don't have, the technology doesn't support the LED lamps. So now you got to replace the fixtures. Now you're talking, each one of these fixtures to buy it and replace it and take it out and replace it and rewire it, it can be several $100, maybe even $1,000 or more. So now if you start doing $50,000, $60,000 worth of lighting and you can go get a $20,000 grant, it's a pretty good deal.
Is the process pretty easy?
The grant process, the way I understand it, it is, yeah. I don't think it's a very complicated thing. Once you get in contact with your ComEd rep, I think they pretty much just help you through the whole process.
And if you buy your lighting fixtures through a distributor, they will do all the paperwork for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you just hire an electrician to remove and replace.
Now, are most of those electrical surges though, like from the outside due to ComEd? It's not really our building necessarily. Oh, it is our building too? I thought it was always like ComEd had a problem, like something outside.
No, it's just, as Jack mentioned, that we have enough power coming in. It's just the orientation of some of the,
Okay. But there's been issues with ComEd though.
Yeah, there could be times when it is, right, it is a surge coming from the outside, which is always a problem because ComEd, they're basically going to say, well, I'm giving you service and that happens type of thing. There are things that could be done within the building that would help improve that condition, and looking at the loading between the two main panels, between the east and west side, might result in some efficiencies there as well.
And then the other question I had, and I can't find it right now in the packet, but there was something where you said, I thought it was like we're at 37% capacity.
Yeah, it might have been 27%, but yeah.
So, and then, but you couldn't tell the way it was distributed, but we might need more electrical capacity. Did I read that right, or?
Not capacity, but access.
The way it's
where it's at, where you
Okay.
have power to patrons, to staff, to equipment.
So we have enough power, basically, we just got to distribute it differently.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I was a little confused reading that. In one sentence, it was,
Yeah.
we've got plenty of power with that.
and probably replace circuit breakers, maybe add.
Yeah, that's what we were trying to say, is that you have room and you have capacity in your system the way it exists within the building. It just may not be as distributed as efficiently, and then the aging of your circuit breakers is at the point where if you go to try to pull a new panel off one of your a sub panel off one of your main panels, you may end up just wanting to rebuild the panel itself to put in new circuitry, so that as you pull out additional power, it doesn't contribute to this surging condition.
Is that what our patrons, is the issue with electrical, is the access that we've been hearing? So when there was a comment there about the users having issues with electric, is that one of the problems, is the access of the electric in the library itself?
That's one issue.
One issue on top of it.
Is plugging in. Like today we had, all the computers were used, and I think Beth walked through the building and people were trying to find places to plug their laptops.
We had people sitting on the floor finding outlets on the wall, so they had no table, but because all the tables were filled, all the computers were filled.
Yeah.
It's not an everyday occurrence, but today was one of
It
those
was very
days.
hot.
It was cool in the building today. We
Right.
had everybody in the building.
Mhm. And that's something that certainly isn't unique to this library. All libraries deal with that, and furniture companies are catching up to this issue as well.
Right.
And are identifying alternative ways to take the outlet that's over here and provide access to furniture that's over there. It's not always purely elegant, but it is an improvement.
So, not being one to promote spending money on consultants myself, but it almost seems like your recommendation would be to have somebody, and I'm just gonna say an electrical
Engineering.
engineering
Yep.
firm,
Yep.
do an analysis, which would be a follow-up to your analysis.
I would, and it's a combination of things. You've got a paging system that's not really in good shape. You've got lighting controls which are substandard. You've got power issues that seem to be kind of a common understanding that you have these surges. You have access to power issues that seem to be kind of a recurring issue. And then you've got all these lights that would benefit from being upgraded to LED fixtures. So when you take all of that together, it would seem to me that instead of picking them off one by one and trying to solve it yourself, or hiring a contractor to come in and say, oh, I think we should do this, a more comprehensive approach to the electrical topic, I think is a solid recommendation. I think it's good practice.
So I think I might have gotten down 3 of the 5 that you mentioned. One was lighting controls, one was power surge issues,
Right?
one was upgrading the lights to LEDs,
Mm-hmm.
and then I missed,
So-
Access.
Yeah, access to power and where you provide outlets,
And paging.
and then paging.
got it, okay.
And with the paging, Jack had mentioned it's kind of not up to speed, but there are also corners and bathrooms that don't have any paging at all. So that's
Yeah.
a big security, safety issue.
Then there were some miscellaneous things that were in the report which weren't identified as critical, but you have a lot of battery-operated exit and emergency signs, which probably should be looked at and made sure that they're current and in good condition. You have some spaces that don't have battery-operated emergency lighting, that should be looked at. So there's just kind of a collection of all these miscellaneous little things that I think it would be hard to just go off and hire, call an electrical contractor. This is what the report says, go do this. I think you need an in-between step.
And do you deal with libraries that have a library-wide UPS system, or is that over the top?
No, it's not over the top for a library server system. It's not uncommon. Some libraries have gone to generators.
Okay, and you mentioned the word server in there.
Mhm.
Do you see them just backing up servers, or do you see them backing up all the electricity in the library?
So two different components to that. The UPS system would only be for computer servers.
Okay.
Generators would be used to back up your technology and then your fire and life safety systems. So generators are typically put on to have your emergency lighting, your fire alarm systems, fire control systems, those types of things would be tied to, and sometimes phones are tied directly to a generator.
Kind of like you would have in a home, like if you had a generator in case of a power failure or power outage,
Yep.
that it'll.
You can do your basic.
You do your basic things.
Yep, exactly.
When you're talking about the electric, are you talking, I would use as an example, say you were to do those improvements, is that basically do the improvements to the current state of 2019, but technology in the sense of, or like the acceptable standard, or are there other standards past that? Because what I'm looking at is, okay, you make these improvements or these renovations or whatever, but what if 5 years from now there's new technology that comes in that's even better, or could that have been an option when we did that?
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a very convoluted question, so I apologize.
Yeah, you don't want to spend money now that 5 years from now you look back and go, why did we spend that money? That's kind of what I'm hearing, right?
Well, that but also when you're talking about upgrading, is it upgrading to a certain base standard, or are there standards above that? So, for example, on energy efficiency, if you wanted to have a more efficient system, then are there options outside of what was recommended in this report?
So, it's a good question. I guess the way I would answer that right now is the LED lighting fixtures have become so energy efficient that anything that happens in 5 years is going to be very minor. It's going to be very minor. The real challenge that's happening is that we're saving all this energy on lighting and windows and roofing and so forth, and then we're consuming more energy because we have all this additional technology that people are wanting to plug in. So, you know, I think it's gonna, personally, this isn't really like a professional recommendation, but personally, I think that as we become more unwired with our technology, like I'm using the battery off my laptop now, and with the portable chargers that people have for their handhelds and so forth, I think that's where that technology is going to really change. So, you know, does the library, instead of putting outlets everywhere, at some point maybe provide these wireless chargers for people to check out, just so they can use their portable while they're here? You know, those are the kind of things I think the conversation will be around, that you know, that will change the way that the building operates, because they did a great job of putting floor outlets in the building. They did it back in 1980, right? But now you don't have things where they put the floor outlets, which is always the problem. And as many times as you try to plan where to put outlets, it's never going to be right. That's why they're coming up with furniture ideas and battery ideas, and those kind of things.
On Tom's point, I think he was also referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, is in this report, this is kind of a middle of the road recommended standard.
Keep you going.
Yeah.
It's not
like the
right.
utmost we could do in terms of energy efficiency and or topography plan or anything.
No.
It's kind of, this is where we're going to be okay.
Yeah, this will keep you, keep your existing physical plant current and upgraded. You know, if you wanted to, so for example, if you wanted to look at a wholesale mechanical upgrade, you're going to spend a lot of money. You potentially are going to spend a lot of money in air handling units. You have one boiler that's not too old, one that's aging. You have condensers that are 5 to 9 years old. If you wanted to look at a comprehensive mechanical solution where you take all of that out and you put in geothermal wells because you have property, you could dig wells and put a whole geothermal system in here, which would be wildly expensive, but in 20 years, you would probably be money ahead. You'd be spending so much less on energy. Your payback probably would be 12 to 15 years for, you might have to spend $1.5 million for a geothermal system, but in 12 to 15 years, your energy costs would be so low, you'd probably get the payback for the next 50 years beyond that. So those are things that aren't contemplated in here.
And that was right, Tati.
Thanks.
Actually, I have a question. It might even be more for staff. How we need the handlers, but I know that the HVAC was upgraded, 5 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago?
Some pieces of
Some
it were.
pieces. How, do you know why they just didn't do all of it since, it's old.
It was still old then.
Old then. Do you know why that wasn't done back then?
All I can say is probably the cost was high.
So that repair was expensive at the time, but.
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe it was back to looking at it in '07, when they did the atrium and
Okay.
carpeting and some other things like that, that they couldn't do HVAC and those things, so they chose to replace, I believe,
So I thought the HVAC project was like 2011 or 12.
it was definitely
Yeah.
after that,
Yeah.
but again, they chose
Because
to
of-
do the
And-
control system so that you could, help me, Jack.
Yeah, so you put the building automation system in,
Right,
it's part of that.
right.
Which helps energy efficiency, it helps balance the building. And it looks like what they did at that time is they did one boiler, and I think they did one of the condensers, one of the older condensers.
The York.
Oh, and then they added the adult services York unit.
That was actually my next question, because I see that it was not known why that air conditioner was added just for adult services.
It's fit for that very small adult services office. That's the only office it serves.
And we don't know why that was done, or?
I think it's because it's kind of where the building joins, the
Okay.
new to the old, and I
And
think
it-
that that part was just always not,
And the
And-
duct work there is probably minimal.
Okay. I was gonna say, is there a way to, is that HVAC system big enough where that could kind of be expanded to use in other parts of the building, or no?
We would have to consult our HVAC
Okay.
professionals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say on a limited basis.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not much different than a residential unit. It's a rooftop unit,
Okay,
right, with a condenser outside. It doesn't look much bigger than
Okay.
a house unit.
okay, I think I know which one you're talking about there. Anybody else?
I can just tell you one other thing about the roof. We
Oh, right.
found some staining in the light fixtures in the other meeting room. And I think this might have been after the heavy rains of last Tuesday.
Just recently.
Yes, and so the roofer was here yesterday, and he was up on, so we had him in the meeting room, then up on the roof. The only thing he could find, this is the flat part of the roof, that was flashing over here in the corner, so that was repaired. He doesn't know if that's exactly what's causing it, and if we'll have to watch that, but he also said that the coping on this part of the roof is starting to disintegrate, and that's like cement pieces where the roof joins the wall, if I'm saying it correctly. And that, he's starting to see pieces of the cement on the roof up there, so that's another thing we have to keep an eye on, he said.
Is that above youth services, or?
No, it's
That's
above the
right.
meeting room right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Jack, you talk about kind of how these costs are here, but it's only the construction costs,
Yep.
correct? So
Yeah.
if I'm reading your description here, it's between another 15 and 30% of, let's say, the 510 of the 0 to 2 years, plus maybe another 3% or something like that, or whatever, if inflation passed the
Right.
2020.
Right.
So I just want to make sure I
Yep.
understood that.
Yeah, that's an accurate representation, because it's hard to predict out besides what's going on right now. So that's why we put those qualifications on there. And then the 15 to 30% is, there's always soft costs associated with construction. Design professionals, permitting fees, all of those types of things. And of course, in any of these things, these are all kind of taken as small slices of items. The more that you have the appetite to aggregate things together and combine some electrical work with mechanical work, or bathrooms with carpeting, or lighting with ceilings, the more efficiency you're going to get out of all of those things. But that's taking the next step.
Okay.
But
And there were two, correct me if I'm wrong, so it's an electrical study. And then the topography,
Stormwater,
engineering,
yep.
so there's two additional studies that in this report are recommended by.
Right. Right.
Do you have firms that you would recommend, and what would the average cost be?
Well, we specific to the stormwater, the urgent issues there, we met with an engineer who I would recommend for this work, Mike Runner from Erickson Engineering. I think he said it would be under $10,000 for him to do his analysis and recommendations, because he's gonna have to meet with the city, he's gonna have to go to DuPage County Stormwater, he's gonna have to look at an engineered solution, get it approved, put some documents together in a bid, and then you guys can bid it. So I think that's pretty reasonable. On the electrical side, we work with a variety of different mechanical, electrical engineering companies. I'd like to give that a little thought, to give you a recommendation on that side.
What would like a typical price range be?
Well, some sort of study like that, I think I put in the report $10,000 to $15,000, something like that.
Can you talk a little bit about when Mike came and spoke with us about the topography? Because that's been brought up a couple of times. You know, we talked about French drains, we've got the hill into our parking lot, and then our detention areas. That's a major project because there's been, we brought up the possibility of remaining on this footprint or looking at other locations. That's just out there as an idea. So if we were to remain in this footprint, to completely visit that problem, can you talk about what he talked about? I'm not gonna have the right language, but, you know, our sidewalks are sinking.
Right.
Our curbs are up,
Right.
and that's all across the campus.
Right.
So, a few more words on that.
Sure. So just to kind of walk you through the site a little bit, if you start at the southeast corner of the site, way southeast end of the parking lot, with the wooden fence where there's past the garbage cans and all that, so that's going uphill, and it continues to go uphill to the south, to the residences to the south. At that far southeast corner of your site, you have a storm structure. And the storm structure is basically a manhole. And then when I say structure, I mean under the manhole, there's a concrete structure which is a basin. And water comes in from the hill, from your neighbors, and hits that area, and it collects through the manhole into that structure, and then it hits a series of pipes that leave the basin and go underground and go through the site. So you have, with regard to your storm water system, it starts there, and then you have the detention basin on the south side of the parking lot, on the south parking lot. You have storm structures in the parking lot. You have storm structures along the building. You have storm structures on the east side. You have storm structures on the north parking lot. And then you have the north basin. Everything is all connected. So all of your water, whether it enters at the southeast corner, in the detention, in the parking lot, in the drive aisles, in the north parking lot, or the north detention basin, it's all connected. All of those pieces and structures are all connected via piping, underground piping, which then essentially all leaves the site to the north. So your whole site is draining into that system and leaving along Front Street. And that's why it has to be controlled, and it has to be restricted so that it doesn't just wash out Front Street. The topography of the site with regard to the different elevations is contributing to a lot of the things that Tatiana mentioned with regard to the sidewalks and the curbs and the parking lot and the erosion in some of your landscaping. Because of the topography, the water isn't just running across the surface and going into the nice detention basins and leaving the site. It's coming through the hills. It's carrying sediment with it. And the older, as the building ages and the sites age, the more sediment it's carrying with it. So this is a problem that is going to probably get worse over time because of the natural topography of your site and the aging of the site and the system and the deterioration of the pipes. So when we were talking with Mike about this is probably something that you're going to continue to invest in over time. This VisuSewer report talked about relining the concrete pipes in place, doing the repairs, replacing the structures. We're replacing some of these restrictors and upgrading those. So it's just something that's going to continue to be an ongoing maintenance issue for the library, because it would be impractical to think that you could correct it completely, because you'd have to tear up all the parking lots, all the sites, all the stormwater. You'd have to do major regrading. You'd have to probably put in a different type of stormwater detention system. All of those things are cost prohibitive. They just are. So the things that we talked about, so kind of the short-term critical items of looking at it holistically, making some improvements, and then putting a plan in place going forward for you, and then tying it into potentially a parking lot replacement program 10 years down the road with sidewalks is, to me, a practical solution, with the understanding that you're going to continue to replace in deteriorated curbs, deteriorated sidewalks. The curbs and the sidewalks, I think I talk about this in the report, are of a vintage that they're poured independently, so they're always going to settle at different rates no matter what you do, unless you tie everything together. maybe that's something to consider going forward as you do these replacements, is to not, if you're gonna do some replacement, do an integral solution, so that area won't, 2 years from now, you're not gonna have the same problem. That might be something to consider. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
Any others?
where you started, actually, I had a question on that too, where the storm structure on the southeast portion, it collects rainwater from adjacent property. Is that legal for like somebody's neighboring property to have stormwater come onto your property? I always thought that you can't put stormwater on other people's property.
You're not supposed to anymore, but because of the existing conditions
It's like
and age,
like
you're
grandfather.
gonna be grandfathered in.
But like if that was brand new, they would.
They would have to do something different, yeah.
But because it's
Right.
grandfathered in, I guess
Right.
they're exempt, so.
I will say, so yes, with the qualification. One of your neighbors has got, it looks to be like a sump pump discharge or a drain tile discharge that's coming all the way down the property right next to your fence, clearly taking advantage of the fact that you have a stormwater structure right on the other side of the fence. So it's being exacerbated by what they've done on their own property. Now that most likely is not acceptable. You can't stop the water from running down the hill onto yours, right?
Yeah.
But directing water to yours artificially is probably not something that's kosher.
So that's something we might be able to.
That'll be one of those touchy neighbor subjects.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's good. you know.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
And please, if something happened, something comes up afterwards, down the road, you can funnel it through Tatiana or Beth. I'll be glad to answer any follow-up questions, and if needed, it's just down the
Just to
road.
clarify, we're talking possibly two different consultants.
Yes.
Spoke of an engineer.
For electrical,
For electrical?
yeah, somebody to look at kind of the electrical
Okay.
topics, and then somebody to look at your site stormwater topics.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I know I had also noticed there might be a presence of asbestos. Do you think obviously when you get into older buildings and stuff?
Yeah, that's something that goes into all of our reports, and I can speak from experience to tell you that, it used to be anything built before, 1978 didn't have asbestos in it. That's no longer the case, because the standards have gotten so restrictive that the mud on this drywall, where the drywall pieces come together, then they put the tape and the mud on it to smooth over the seam. In Darien, at Center Cass School District right now, we had to abate all the drywall inside the existing building to renovate the building because all the drywall compound had asbestos in it. So it can be in the most obscure places. And so if you do any kind of renovation, the areas in this kind of a building that we would find it would be those, like a drywall compound or mastic under some of the flooring that could potentially have had it.
There was the other question that you had mentioned down the road, carpet, replacing the carpet. And I know sometimes you'll find the asbestos underneath the carpet, but carpet versus some kind of laminate flooring, which in terms of longevity, which would be better? It's probably easier to maintain than carpet,
So we put a lot of that in that the architects recommend. I will give you what I see happening in a lot of public buildings. A lot of the high traffic areas are getting a combination of walk-off carpet. So like this whole hallway out here, instead of being the nice decorative carpet, would be a walk-off carpet, the whole thing. It's a little bristly if you walk through it on bare feet, but it's not a house. So who's walking around on your bare feet? Doesn't maybe come in attractive array of colors, but it also doesn't get as dirty. It's intended as you come in from the parking lot to take the stuff off your shoes before you get to the attractive areas. So a combination of walk-off carpet is being used more in these high traffic areas. And then a product called LVT, or luxury vinyl tile. is becoming widely used. It's kind of today's version of the old vinyl composition tile. Everybody's seen the 12 by 12 tiles, right? Everybody's seen them in all the schools, they're everywhere. Well, no architects like to specify those anymore because they're not attractive, they don't have an appeal to them. And the other problem with VCT is it requires you to buff it and wax it every so often because it retains kind of the scuff marks, and to get that nice sheen on it, you got to buff it and wax it, so it's expensive and high maintenance. So for example, in a school in Glen Ellen right now, we are taking all the VCT out of all of that's a 150,000 square foot building. We're taking all the VCT out of the hallways and putting LVT in. Essentially, it's just another hard surface tile, but it comes in planks, it comes in more attractive colors, it looks better in today's
So it
standards.
kind of looks like laminate flooring in a sense, where you
It
can get
looks
the long
like it.
planks or
Yes.
shorter planks or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, and you can do different color combinations and designs and stuff, and all you have to do is you just wash it. You don't have to scrub it, you don't have to buff it, you don't have to wax it. So from a maintenance standpoint, it's going to save that school, it'll save the school $50,000 the first year they put it down.
What about the recycled rubber kind of tiles? Are they doing that anymore?
Yeah, I tend to see that more in like a park district type facility, more athletic oriented, where it's kind of multi-purpose type space.
Okay.
Would it be cheaper? I mean, or more cost effective versus carpeting? I mean, or are they comparable in price?
Let me think about that for a minute. LVT, an LVT type product versus carpeting, I think LVT would be comparable, if not a little less expensive than carpeting.
And
I'm
the
thinking of-
longevity would be probably longer too.
I was thinking about the recycled rubber as being also kind of a sound, helpful with the sound. Like carpet
Yeah.
is, it's
Yeah,
quieter
well, that's-
than having hard
that's-
surface.
Right, that's the thing, is that the downside of the hard surface is that it's limited on where you would want to use it in a library because of the noise issue. You know, it would be more like your main hallway, traffic areas, stairs, those kind of things. Once you get beyond that, then or maybe like a zone in front of a circulation desk, but not the whole
area.
floor type of thing. So some kind of, rubberized flooring or LVT or something like that is easier to maintain, will last longer, but has more limited application for a library.
So I have a question. It's more about a process versus finance. When you've worked with other libraries or other public institutions and you're doing these assessments, do they have, are you usually working with like a project management firm or something that is managing the overall look and feel of the project? Like we want these 5 studies we need to come in to make determination, or is it to the pleasure of each entity that you work with?
No, it's usually based on what the entity is looking for in terms of this group making with staff's input a determination of what their priorities are, and then figuring out what the best course of action is. The reason for recommending in this particular case a couple of engineering studies is because I don't know what your appetite is for, renovations and, ceilings and lights and restrooms and flooring. I mean, you start adding all of these things up and it starts to be, kind of an architectural project. But, that's completely a different topic of conversation. I didn't want to go there in an assessment report.
And we're not there yet.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's why I
Right?
asked that question.
Yeah.
It's more about just, you get a lot of different studies coming in. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of different, there's a cost-benefit ratio here to everything that we're
Yeah.
getting. And I always think I would want someone's like, what if you did this, but you save money here, and the
Well-
bottom line on all the different scenarios is very helpful.
And I'm glad you asked that question, because I think we kind of glossed over one of the other studies or analysis you have to do. If you're going to go and replace these air handling units, you're going to hire an engineer, because they're going to have to look at that and decide what size, how will it work with your system, what's the right approach. They're going to have to put together a set of specifications to put it out for bid. So I don't want to study you to death, but these three different areas, the site issues that you're dealing with, the mechanical needs that you have, and then these electrical concerns, which, you could go hire a sound inc, come and look at your paging system, and they would provide a very good, solid recommendation to just come in and replace it. But it might not satisfy your public bidding criteria. So you might have to do something more than that. I don't know. But I would provide a recommendation to Tatiana if that's something that becomes a priority. Call a vendor who deals with this and get them in here, take a look at it and see what they can do for you. So that's kind of a discrete product system that you can do that with. Your electrical things don't neatly fit into that as well. So that's why I suggested hire an electrical engineer to do that. And the same thing with the mechanical air handling units. You're going to need to hire an engineer for that. And your stormwater, it's such a discrete, high, visibility item that's creating problems for you. I'd hate to say go do these things and that's going to fix your problem, because stormwater in DuPage County, in most counties, I shouldn't pick on DuPage, it has to be done right. And the only way to do that is with get an engineer involved.
So I'm thinking, and I don't know if this is correct, but I'm thinking that the facility committee kind of needs to take a look at this and then interface with the various other studies. Correct me, I think Marjorie, you're the committee chair, but correct me if I'm wrong, and kind of come to the board as a whole and kind of lead us, direct us as to what you feel we should be doing.
Right, I agree, this is a lot to absorb. We'll definitely have to meet and try to gather.
And then I
all
think
our
We can
thoughts.
talk about
But we were
this.
gonna say, we could talk about that when
Sure.
we get to the board meeting with the
Okay.
physical plant, because
Mhm.
we're kind
Oh,
of running
okay.
against the clock. Does anybody have any last questions or comments? We got a
I just
agenda
wanted to
item
say
four.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you very much.
My
Thank
questions
you as
via
well.
email.
Yeah, please do, really. And if you need me to come back for some more conversation, not a problem.
Very
Okay.
good
Thank you,
job.
Jack.
Thank you.
Can I get
You're
a
welcome.
motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 7:03.